With March Madness in full swing and my feed jam-packed with all kinds of hypotheticals, one question in particular really caught my attention. The question of what is the worst current NBA player that could carry a 16-seed March Madness team to the national championship? And at first it seemed easy, just about anybody, right? But then I thought about it a little bit deeper, thinking back to teams with great NBA players coming up short in the tournament, teams with mediocre NBA players not even making the tournament, and hell, there are even current college teams like Rutgers that have two future top 3 draft picks and they didn't even scratch being a 16th seed. That being said, I don't think it's impossible. I think when we break down what a 16 seed needs most and the type of players that fit that mold, we would be able to find the worst player in the league that could for sure get it done. And after researching tirelessly, my answer is a lot more interesting than you would expect. But before we get into all that, I want to thank you all for the insane growth that we have been seeing recently. I set out a goal to reach 10,000 subscribers by 2026 and we are on an absolute crash course for that goal right now. So if you're in the mood for twice weekly hoops content, then I'd suggest you subscribe because it's free. Alright, with all the introductions out of the way, let's break down the worst NBA player that could carry a 16 seed to national champions. For starters, I think we should address the needs of an average 16 seed. I'm sure if you've tuned into any of these garbage games, you'll immediately notice the unreal size discrepancy. Most 16 seeds can't afford these bigger players with actual technical basketball skills, well, because they're going to the bigger schools. So instead, most of these teams are comprised of smaller players that have genuine skill with handling, shooting, and playmaking but lack size. And then they make up for the size with bigs who have virtually no bag. We've seen UMBC beat Virginia as a 16 seed because they could hit from 3 and were a good matchup against a relatively undersized Virginia team. And the only other 16 seed to ever win a game, FDU, won once again off of shooting and not being out-physicaled by size, thanks to Zach Edey having the fundamental basketball handle of a board of plywood. Therefore, our NBA player must have at least 3 of the following 4 pillars. Pillar 1, size. Pillar 2, shooting. Pillar 3, defense. And player 4, playmaking. Pillar 4, playmaking. Sorry, I'm really tough. We need a player big enough to make up for all of the smaller 16 seed teammates, but one that can also space the floor and keep up with the high volume scoring coming in since they can't guard everyone on the court at all times. That being said, they need to be solid enough on defense to make stops in the later rounds when games get tight and even in round 1 against serious 1 seed competition. Remember, no 16 seed has ever won twice, and this player needs to take the team to 6 wins in a row. So defending these top talents later on is instrumentally important. Finally, playmaking, which makes sense because it's a long game and they need to be able to respond to getting game planned. They need to have the offensive gravity that can truly activate their teammates shooting and get defenders off of the undersized guys to get them the looks they need. So with those 4 criteria, let's look who can actually get this done, and it's clear that the top talent in the league could for sure do it. Giannis is easily the best pick out of the entire NBA. Not only does he possess all 4 of these pillars, but he has a 5th pillar of clutch gene that would absolutely kill it in March. Wembanyama is probably my second pick as well because we've seen him go against young talent in the Olympics before and he absolutely crushed it carrying that France team. Wemby possesses all 4 pillars, and although guys like Jokic and Luka lack the pillar of defense, Shea lacks the pillar of size, and Anthony Davis lacks the pillar of shooting, I still believe their respective offensive and defensive gravities could propel a 16 seed to a championship. Notice how I use the word respected there because Luka has absolutely no defensive gravity. However, this isn't something that just anybody can do. Keep in mind the tournament is riddled with future NBA all-star caliber players. Meanwhile, the NBA players team is full of investment bakers and construction workers, so it's important to acknowledge that not just any good player could do it. There are plenty of NBA superstars that fell short in the tournament while playing with great teams around them. From players that were good but got a lot better in the NBA like Curry to players that were great but got a lot worse in the NBA like Zion. Regardless, the point I'm trying to make is that the runs are made by the best teams in the tournament, not the best players. LeBron has never even won a single game in college. Don't Google why. Seriously though, the Cinderella stars of the past like Doug Edert and hell, Stephen Curry were able to explode on offense and absolutely stroke it from 3, but eventually lost due to not being able to handle the onslaught of bigger defenses and talent later in the tournament. That makes me want to shorten our list of contenders to strictly shooting bigs, not someone like Jalen Brunson. Brunson has a plethora of experience in the tournament. He can shoot the lights out and he's proven he can lead a team, but he had NBA talent around him back then, and I think he'd get overwhelmed the further they advanced. So now that we're looking into strictly shooting bigs, or at least bigs who can get buckets, let's start off with the obvious contenders, the MVP caliber players that we've mentioned. And then Then we move on a little bit lower to guys like Cat, who I think is a serious contender here. He can play more than passable defense on the bigs of the tournament like Kaman Maluach, and his shooting is more than what we need to win. That being said, we do have to mention he was on a Kentucky team that was so stacked that Devin Booker was on the bench, and they still never even scratched the national championship. But then again, back then, shooting wasn't the main aspect of his game, so I think he could definitely pull off a championship if he were given the keys and had the skill he has today, especially after what we've seen from him this season. So let's look a little further and find someone who's worse. Domantas Sabonis is a step under Cat, but he can shoot, he can defend, and he is notably someone who can box out and rebound against virtually anyone in college. I'm sure you've noticed the jarring lack of physicality on offensive rebounds for some of these top teams this March, and Sabonis would absolutely expose this. I think he could for sure win the Natty with the 16 team, so it's time to go even lower. We land at Ivica Zubac, and Zubac is interesting because he just does not shoot threes, and prior to Harden unlocking his game, he wasn't a very dominant scoring option. I think I wouldn't be confident in him to make a deeper run than the Elite Eight purely off of his inability to generate offense on his lonesome and shoot the three ball. So to pivot to someone that is arguably worse but can definitely shoot, I think I found my answer for the worst NBA player in the league that could still carry a 16 seed to national championship honors. Ladies and gentlemen, the GOAT himself, Naz Reid. If you aren't a Timberwolves fan like me and only know Naz Reid from the jokes on TikToks and the towels you've seen online, let me be the first to tell you it is not a joke. Yes, Naz isn't even a starter, but he definitely should be because when he's hot, he can completely change the swing of a game. He's great on defense, he's a solid rebounder, he can make plays, and most of all, he can shoot incredibly well for how big he is. He's just a great scorer on all three levels. I firmly believe that Naz Reid could guard any big on any team and absolutely dominate the offensive side of the ball, gravitating teams toward him for the first defensive slide and fully unlocking short shooting teammates to simply rain down points on these bigger teams. I seriously believe that a 16 seed built around current Naz Reid with the right paths and matchups could potentially make a run to the national championship and come away with the trophy. But in all honesty, I think that only the top 5 players in the league could 100% do it without any questions asked. Matter of fact, if I were tasked with picking 4 players to 100% carry a 16 seed to a national championship, those 4 players would be Giannis, Jokic, Luka, and Wemby, which is interesting because those are all players that we have never seen in the college basketball scene. All we have seen is them absolutely crushing and dominating the professional talent from their home countries, and I think if they were put in that same scenario having to lead a college team, they 100% could, especially when we take the prime current versions of those players. That being said, we have never seen them hoop in March, but I believe that their individual clutch abilities could absolutely let them carry a team if they were given the keys. Let me know in the comments if you agree and think that Naz Reid could actually do it, or who you think in the NBA is worse that could. I read and respond to literally every comment, no matter how big the video gets, and if you don't believe me, then comment, and I promise you I will respond. Again, thank you all for the insane love you've been giving recently. I truly can't thank you enough, and I've got a few huge March Madness videos and overall projects coming soon that I know you will all enjoy. So if you want to stay updated on all things hoops, then please subscribe. It's free.